before my parents got married, they agreed that they wanted to have kids biologically and through adoption. So they had my older sister biologically, and then they're like, oh my gosh, we need another kid. So I was that kid. I'm the second oldest. I was adopted from Ethiopia when I was 10 weeks old, so I was an itty bitty baby. I really don't remember much, but there are pictures and I'm like surrounded by nuns, so I know that I was in an orphanage under their care. And then I flew back to New Mexico, and I've been here ever since.
Yes. So my biological mom had an emergency home birth that she did herself, and she took me to the hospital along with her 2 other kids. I was there for about 24 hours, and my adopted parents showed up, and my birth mom put me in my mom's arms and said, here's your baby. And then my adoptive parents took me home.
So when I was like 2 or 3, I got adopted. 2 or 1, I mean. I got adopted, and I don't really remember a lot, but all I know is that God put me in that place. And my mom and dad couldn't have a baby, the one who adopted me, and then God spoke to them and said, adopt, and so I was their child. And my birth mom knew she didn't have enough room, and so it was special because my birth mom got to say, here, I can't do this and I need help. And so that's how that's how I got put in my family.
Yeah, so my adoption was a little bit different from what I mostly hear. I have 2 other siblings. They're both half siblings, and around the age of 14 for me at least, and my other siblings were about, I want to say, maybe 10 and 5, so there's a big age gap there, but it was a closed adoption with the thought of my birth family kind of still interacting, at least my aunts and uncles. And basically kind of what happened was I was living off and on with my aunts and my uncle and their 4 kids, and we were living with them, and it was just getting to be a lot for my aunt because the original plan was just to stay there for a little bit and then our mom take full custody of us again, and that unfortunately did not happen. And so we had been living with our aunt for about 7 years. And I just remember I had come back from actually Tennessee from seeing my 3rd sibling because she was adopted by a family. And my aunt had taken me aside, and we had gone to A&W, and they were telling me about this family that was interested in adopting us. And a lot of thoughts went through my head. One of them was like, what is going on? Because I had previously known my mother and my stepfather, and so that was a little bit weird. But just that thought of stability for my siblings, I was like, okay, let's try this out. And then I found these amazing people who ended up becoming my parents and my siblings' parents, and that was really, really lovely.
So I was adopted at birth, and my adoption story is a little bit crazy because I was 1 month premature. So I was actually born on the day that my adoptive parents were supposed to meet my birth parents. So I ruined their plans and I decided to be born on that day. So they ended up meeting in the hospital, and they were there for the whole birth, and I've known them ever since. I was in the NICU for a little while, but after that I got to go home with them and meet the puppies, and yeah, ever since then I've always been their daughter. So
I think adoption has given me a greater sense of appreciation or gratitude. I think it's cool to look back on my life and be like, oh my gosh, like God put me in this place for a reason, and like these people, these opportunities, I don't know, it's just cool. So I think it just makes me appreciate what I have in my life more.
Of course, like meeting all my friends and my family and pursuing what I love, which is dancing, and having like opportunities to travel all around the world.
Being adopted has impacted my life because if I haven't gotten adopted, then I wouldn't know God, and it's like if I didn't know God, I would probably like have like a much harder time unknowingly what to do. I would probably have more anxiety. So I think God just found that perfect place to put me in my adoption home, and so he found it to go right there. So yeah.
It's impacted in a lot of ways. I went from someone who thought she was gonna work a 9-to-5 McDonald's job to support her siblings to being in college right now and just being able to do something that I feel like is gonna help people in the long run. I'm going to school for psychology so I can become a therapist because I've just been so impacted, but just being adopted in general, that I want to help those families that are blended as well, just in that way of just bringing counseling and bringing unity to that family. And so I would never have these opportunities if I wasn't adopted, because as the eldest child, it was my mindset to take care of my siblings when I graduated high school. And now my siblings have these amazing opportunities to pursue the things that they love. I never got to do sports or things as a kid, but my brother is playing basketball. He's going to get into basketball. My sister is very much an artist, and they get to have this stable home where they can explore these things that they're interested in. So
being adopted has impacted my life in so many ways because I've just been blessed so much in my family. I've seen what it can look like being in a family that isn't able to emotionally or financially provide for you in the ways that you need to be provided for. And so in my family, I've had so many opportunities and just amazing chances to chase my dreams. I have the most supporting parents ever, so I know that they'll always believe in me and they'll always help me pursue whatever my dreams are.
I think it's like you have to think about what's best for the child and not be scared. Honestly, like if you're like giving your child up for adoption, it's like you have to put them first. And then I think if you're choosing to adopt a child, you also have to think about like how they'd fit into your family. Like, are you financially able to take care of them? Like how you want your family to look like. And I think that it can be scary to determine that, but I think it's really important to consider adoption.
If you don't like financially have like to provide for them and like to put them first, and it will give them, you don't know how many opportunities they will have with their adoptive family.
I would tell them, don't worry. It's okay if they're nervous at first, because like you're taking a big step and like deciding, do I want to do this? Do I want to proceed? And so you can go and like put them up for adoption to find that easier way, and you don't have to worry, and you can always like see them later if the birth parents want to. And if like you don't know what to do, if someone's pregnant and you don't have enough room, you should put them up for adoption. Like it could be hard, but yeah.
For me personally, if you're considering adoption, I will say it's very important to like think about how it's gonna affect the child in the long run, because if you're like, oh, I'll keep the child, but you're not in a place where you're stable, or you're gonna be on and off again, that's gonna be very hard on the child. I know that stability really affected me. Like, I would live off and on again with my aunt, and I feel like I really missed out on a lot of opportunities just to enjoy a childhood and just be a kid. And so, like, yeah, it's gonna be really hard for you and the child, but I think if you think about what is best for the child's future, I would really consider just making sure that they have a stable home.
I would say that I think if I was in that situation, I would be worried about the baby or the child and how they might feel about being adopted. And I'm not gonna lie, it can be hard, and there's a lot of questions and feelings around it. But ultimately, it'll be the best choice that you could ever make for them. It's the most selfless thing you could do, and honestly, ultimately it comes down to the fact that it's not about you, but it is about the child and what's going to be best for them. So I know when I think about my birth mom, I think of somebody who was really selfless and brave and willing to give up maybe what she might have wanted for what was best for me.
I know, like, at least in my groups of friends at school, adoption isn't like the first thing that comes to mind. A lot of people think that I'm like a mixed baby and that my mom has a lot of baby daddies, and I'm like, guys, like, no, she doesn't. So I think it's just like, it's such a foreign concept in today. Like, everyone assumes that I'm somehow crazily biologically related to my mom or my dad, but I think it's just cool that every time I tell them, like, no, I'm adopted, and they're like, oh my gosh, like, you can do that. And I think it's just cool that, like, their minds have been open to, like, you don't have to have a kid. Like, you can help someone out who needs help giving their kid care.
It doesn't get talked about enough, and it could change and save, like, the child's life.
I think it's important to talk about adoption because I don't think people really realize that how much it can impact someone's life. Like, it's sometimes hard and chaotic at first, and no one really understands but yourself. And some adoption is just like you fit right in perfectly at first. And when I was little, my mom told me that whenever someone knocked at our door, I thought it was my birth mom. And that can really be impacted, especially when you're little. Like, so you kind of need to learn, like, it's okay, you're gonna grow out of it. And people need to understand, because if they don't, then, like, what's the point of adoption, you know? If you know what I mean. And it's really beautiful. It's like an art in a different way, so.
I think that's a very important fact for a lot of different reasons. We have a lot of people who want to adopt babies, and I think that's fantastic. I think that really does need to happen, but sometimes we also forget that there are kids out there who really do need a family, like 4-year-olds to stinking teenagers who are going through so many mood swings. And I've like seen so many kids just go down the wrong path because they didn't have anyone out there looking out for them, and I could have been one of those kids. And so just kind of looking at it and seeing that, yeah, I think it's important to have your own children, but I also think that it's great for those people who maybe want kids but not in the normal traditional way, or, you know, can't have kids, which is really unfortunate. This is another thing where both people get that sense of family, and maybe it's not by the normal means, but it's still by a means that's probably even more special than the normal means, because you choose your family in this part. And once you choose your family, that's like putting full commitment. It's basically like a marriage, except you have children instead. And so I think that, it's okay not to want to give birth to children. But I think it's also like important to decide if you do want kids, like maybe consider adoption. There's so many children out there who want to have a family, and there's a bunch of children that go in groups that need to stick together but want a family. Like, yeah, so I mean, I think adopting any child is amazing. I think we should adopt any child. It doesn't have to just be a baby, but maybe a teenager, maybe a group of children, if you can handle it financially or just even emotionally. And sometimes we have to also understand that those kids are gonna come to you broken when you talk about adoption, and they're gonna need that love and support when you adopt them.
I believe that it's important to talk about adoption because I don't think it is talked about enough. I think that, especially when hearing about other women who might have found themselves in a situation where they were pregnant and it wasn't planned, they didn't know adoption was even an option. So I think that we need to make it more clear that it is an option and they have a choice. There are other choices. And a lot of people just don't know it's an option at all, or that there's this kind of negative stigma surrounding adoption where people think that, they end up going into homes that don't care about them as much, or because you're adopted, you aren't as much part of the family, I guess. So I think that we just need to talk about it more, make it known that it is an option, and, that's what life looks like for people.
At least for me, it's been like people think that I don't necessarily fit into my family, like looks wise, or like personality wise, I guess. So like when I say that, I mean like they think that, oh, like since you're like the black sheep of the family, or like you're the odd one out. But I don't feel that way at all. So I think that's a misconception that I face. But
I'd say like that they don't fit into their family, but it's God's plan and they fit into their family.
I think common exception with adoption is that, like, people think that, like, let's say they always ask you, like, are you born from somewhere? And people always, like, are like, were you born from Australia or whatever? And then you're like, no, I was born in Albuquerque, like where. And I think that's a very common misconception because people are like, well, I didn't know you were adopted. Where were you born? And it's like very common to like, where you're adopted is where you're born usually, I feel like. And people don't really understand usually like that. But the misconception usually is that, like, they're like, gosh, like, you were born there. And sometimes that can impact to being, like, hurt, but, like, you should stand up for that and be proud of it.
That it's easy. I think that it is far from easy, and not everything is going to be perfect. And because you're adopting a child does not necessarily mean that you are saving a child. You are helping them in a sense, but it's not like a I found you, now you owe me type thing. It's a relationship that gets built, and part of that relationship is already broken. And so you're coming into a relationship sometimes where it's harder because you have these children or these babies that are coming from different places and from different backgrounds, and maybe different, like they have different things that affect them from just different things. And so you have to be prepared for that, because I feel like people are like, oh, well, we're adopting, and so it's like it's gonna be easy and it'll be just like a normal family, but it's not always the case. You're gonna have those times where the kids are just like, I want my birth family, or you're gonna have those times where they're just super angry and you can't really understand why, because it's just something that happens. And so I think it's important to realize that it's not an easy process and it takes a lot of work, but in the end, the relationship is really, really beautiful.
A common misconception that I get a lot is that my life is a lot different than other people's, and that's honestly couldn't be further from the truth. My family life looks exactly the same as my friends. I mean, not exactly, because everybody's in different circumstances, but it's just they're the only parents I've ever known, and I know it's not the same in every adoption, but to me, they are my parents. And I think that's a big common misconception, that you kind of think of them just as like somebody taking care of you, or like a foster parent, or, you know, somebody who you aren't directly related to. But in my mind, like, those are my parents, and I know that that's what most adoptive kids think as well, is that my adoptive parents are the only parents that I know. So I think a common misconception is that we aren't real family, or we see each other in a different way, but that couldn't be further from the truth.
I don't think I would. I love my life a lot, so.
No, I wouldn't. I love my life.
No, I would not, because I get to know the Lord now, and if I didn't know the Lord, then that would give me more anxiety, and I don't want more anxiety. And it's okay to be nervous, but you shouldn't worry about it, because you're like in a new family. Sometimes it's better, and you should always make sure like you have the right enough room for the child you're adopting. But no, I would not change anything, because I also have a little brother that's adopted, and I find it so beautiful because people don't realize that. And I find it very special being adopted and different than everyone else in some way. And yeah.
I would change how I came into it. Personal reasons, I did it for my siblings, which is good, but I never was the one to like consider myself. And so I was really angry when I first heard about it. And I put it out there because I wanted my siblings to get the life that they deserved, but I didn't feel like I deserved a good life. And so I think what I would change is just maybe how I saw what I wanted for my life in that moment, because I had already given up any hope of a good life. And so that's probably something I would change. Maybe because fights are gonna happen, and that's just life. And so I wouldn't change those, because that makes us stronger as people and as characters, but I would change how I saw myself in that moment.
I would not change anything about my life or my adoption, because I think it was orchestrated in the way that it was meant to. I believe that God had a plan for my life, and he fit all the pieces perfectly together. And honestly, it's just so obvious that it was meant to be, because all the pieces came together, and the way that they came together, it was just so perfect and divine that you can't ignore that is the way that it was meant to be. So I know when I was little, I may have had some thoughts or like questions, wondering why it was this way, or would I change it if I could. But you know, as you grow older and you start realizing kind of what's important to you and what your life looks like, you just like, all of that kind of goes out the window, and you're like, this is what it's meant to be. These people love me and I love them, and I was here for a reason, and I was put here for a reason. And yeah.
Have an open mind towards it. Don't completely be scared of the idea or afraid to do it.
If you're looking to adopt, I say do it, because it can be a beautiful thing, and yeah.
It's beautiful. It's art. It's rather divine. It's beautiful. Like, you can find it in beautiful ways and different stories.
I think one message is it's not, for sure, as I said before, it's not going to be perfect, but it will be worth it. And our parents aren't perfect, adopted parents or otherwise, but they do love you even when it feels like they don't. And I think that as parents, sometimes your children just need you to hold them, and then other times they'll need you to give advice. But once we're part of that family and we're with you guys, even if it's not easy, later on down the years, we will be coming back to our parents and asking them for advice and thanking them for so many things. Because I know, like, I won't always tell my mom, but she has helped me as an adult in so many ways that I know if I had gone out into the real world, I would not have known what to do, or I'd even made the wrong decisions beforehand. And so I think that, just keep giving your children love and supporting them even when it gets hard, and we'll stick around even if it looks like we won't.
I would say that it's one of the most beautiful ways to make a family. Families are made in all sorts of different ways, different circumstances. They come from different places, but ultimately the thing that binds them all together is love, and that's the most important thing. So I would say that adoption makes families just like any other way you can make a family, and the love that family shares is the most important thing.